I'm Grin to welcome this video. Yes, thank you. Stop. Some science fiction films deal with exploring other planets, while others deal with exploring our own. Today's film fits into the category of the latter. Key title card. Unknown World is a 1951 sci-fi film which utilizes breathtaking locations and really cool miniatures. It would have probably been a really fantastic movie if it were not for the fact that it was so darn boring. It is, as I said, a 1950s sci-fi film, which of course means it's from the atomic age, which means, as with most sci-fi films from the era, the plot mainly focuses on the dangers of or the dangers resulting from nuclear war. In today's film, Unknown World's case, it's dealing with the former, namely the threat and danger that nuclear war poses. The story follows a group of scientists and a young wealthy thrill seeker as they journey deep into the Earth's crust in search of a haven in which humanity could possibly survive if the destructive danger of nuclear war was actually realized. For large parts of this film, this movie is set within the giant drilling machine that the scientists are using to move further and deeper into the Earth's crust. I really enjoyed these parts because they felt a lot like a retro version of the movie The Core, and if you've seen my sci-fi minecart review of that film, you would know that I'm quite a large fan of it. However, when I reviewed The Core, I mentioned that since the entire film is following a small amount of characters largely in a cramped space, it's very important that those characters are likable, or at the very least compelling. And unfortunately, in the Unknown World, they really are not. They're all quite bland, and the closest thing they ever get to really being compelling is when they bicker, and really that's more just awkward than anything else. Also, it kind of speaks volumes to the movie industry that The Core came out 47 years later, and still only has one single obligatory token female character, who just happens to be oh so pretty, but also so clever that she can keep up just as if she were one of the boys. Hoorah! Good job, Hollywood. A second disappointing negative for the Unknown World is the setting, which unfortunately grows stale real fast. Once again, to draw similarities, unlike The Core, which takes about an hour before the actual drilling machine goes into the Earth, and when it does so, the terrain found within inside the world is constantly changing both visually and in a plot-driving sense, in Unknown World, pretty much the opposite is the case. By the 12-minute mark, they're in the cabin of the drill, and by the 20-minute mark, they're within the Earth's crust. And, well, after that, nothing really changes for about an hour straight. This is really quite disappointing because the initial shots of the drill are exciting, the initial shots within the cabin of the drill are quite promising, the set's really cool and it's reactionary to the terrain they're going through, and the shots of the cast exploring the cave are quite visually pleasing. Which might well lead you to exclaim, but Grim, if all of these things are so good, then why are you bagging it? You've just said that the settings are let down, and yet here you are laying on the compliments. And the answer to that is rather simple. The film lacks pretty much any variety. Once they enter the Earth's crust, the audience is treated to about 5 minutes fascination with the caves being explored, and then about 55 minutes of utter boredom. You can only watch a handful of people walking through the same dark cave for so long before it becomes entirely mind-numbing. And then, after some shenanigans and some death and whatnot, they finally find the promised land, find out that it's not suitable for their needs because for some reason everything down there is infertile, and decide to head on back to give humanity another chance. But before they do so, the promised land is flooded and they're washed out to sea, and eventually they resurface back in the upper world. Now, this ending I thought was really quite dumb, which I'll get into a moment, but first I want to have a bit of a mild gripe about the hour of boredom. Now, I don't expect the hour of them exploring the underground cave system to have a constantly changing setting. This movie is from the 1950s and it's an independent film, so budget would be limited, so such an expectation would be ridiculous. However, one of the things that kept the underground exploration in The Core so fresh is that it constantly cut back to what was going on the surface. This meant that you never got too bored at looking at the underground exploration because you were never looking at it for too long. This could have been easily achieved in Unknown World and even done on a budget through simply cutting to news reports about what was going on in the political spectrum. You could have even had it reflecting the character's decision to eventually return to the surface, with the political situation worsening as they descended, and then eventually peace talks breaking out, reflecting the characters deciding to give humanity another chance. This decision too, I also believe to have been another case of completely squandered potential. You see, the realization that humanity is worth fighting for was, I feel, entirely undermined by the fact that the land was infertile and eventually flooded. In reality, there really was no choice. The so-called Promised Land could actually sustain nothing, and even if it could, it would have still been entirely irrelevant because moments later it flooded. As such, I felt that the decision had about as much impact as an alcoholic deciding to leave his favourite bar because it was on fire. He's not really had any progression, and he's not discovered any higher truths, he's simply reacting to the situation at hand. When it really boils down to it though, I think really the main issue with this film is that it's too grand for its own good. If it was a 20-minute TV episode rather than a full-length film, you could probably edit it down into a decent, well-placed piece of entertainment, but as it stands, it's not worth the 74-minute investment. I will say though I absolutely love the cyclotram. It looks like the result of Hag 1 mating with an Oldsmobile Golden Rocket, and is a really cool miniature and set piece throughout the film. It's just, unfortunately, not enough to carry the entire movie. Sir Unknown World. It's not worth sitting down and devoting all of your attention to, but if you want something on in the background while you do other stuff, it's probably worthy of at least that. Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle.
How did they become extinct?
Like some of us on Earth. They seem to hurry the process of extinction.
They what? Is he implying that the lungfish also engaged in nuclear warfare? What an utterly bizarre throwaway line.